Israel's military said on Wednesday that the evacuation of Gaza City is inevitable as the country prepares for a military offensive to occupy the city. The IDF's Arabic language spokesperson Avichai Adrai advised residents of the city in the north of the enclave to listen to instructions and vacate the area. Adrai added that Israeli forces had surveyed vast empty areas south of Gaza City to assist the evacuating residents as much as possible. He also noted that the displaced would receive tents to reside in and pledged to set up infrastructure for the distribution of aid and water, adding that those who voluntarily depart the city and not obstruct Israel's imminent offensive would receive, quote, the most generous quantities of humanitarian aid. Aid groups have warned, however, that an expanded military offensive could worsen an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. International groups accuse Israel of manufacturing a humanitarian crisis in the Strip, slamming them for their conduct of war which has spanned 22 months. Most neighborhoods in the territory lie in ruins, it's over 2 million residents displaced, multiple times, and hungry. Famine was declared in Gaza on Saturday after months-long calls to action by the UN, as Israel continues to insist on controlling the flow of aid and basic necessities into the enclave. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has recognized the alleged genocide carried out by the Ottoman Empire against Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians during the First World War. Netanyahu made the remarks in a podcast interview with popular Armenian-born American presenter Patrick Bet-David. Netanyahu said the Knesset passed a resolution acknowledging the alleged genocide, though it passed no legislation to officially recognize it. Armenia has sought international recognition of the systemic killings, which left an estimated 1.5 million people dead, as a genocide. Israel, one of Turkey's key trading partners, has long grappled with the issue and been hesitant to label the atrocities in the early 20th century as a genocide. In 2001, then Foreign Minister Shimon Peres categorically denied what he described as Armenian claims. Turkey, on the other hand, has routinely rejected allegations that the mass killings and forced deportations of hundreds of thousands of Armenians amounted to genocide. A UN review has acknowledged Ankara's claims that more Turks were killed in the years leading up to and during the war, leading to a lack of consensus acknowledging the killings as genocide at the UN level.
2 children were killed after a shooter opened fire with a rifle through the windows of a Catholic church in Minneapolis on Wednesday. Nearly 200 children of the Annunciation Catholic School were sitting in the pews to celebrate Mass during the first week of school. 14 other children and 3 octogenarian parishioners were wounded but are expected to survive, according to the police chief. Hundreds of Minneapolis residents held a vigil at a nearby school's gym, attended by Governor Tim Walz and Catholic clergy.
To those whose children or parents were injured and who are still in the hospital, to all of the young children who were there for Mass today, I hope that our prayers this evening might give them a sense that they are not alone.
The shooter was identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, who killed himself shortly after firing at the children. FBI Director Kash Patel said on X that the shooting is being investigated as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. Minneapolis police said they hadn't yet found any relationship between the shooter and the church, nor determined a motive for the bloodshed.
Denmark summoned the top US diplomat in the country for talks on Wednesday. It comes after a Danish state broadcaster revealed results of an investigation uncovering foul play on the US part in Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory. The report stated that at least 3 Trump-connected individuals were conducting covert influence operations in the territory in an effort to weaken Copenhagen's ties. Greenland has become the target of US President Donald Trump, who's repeatedly voiced his desire to, quote, take control of the world's largest island. Trump says Washington needs to seize the island to boost its security and eliminate Russian and Chinese maritime threats in the Atlantic. Denmark and Greenland's sovereign government have repeatedly dismissed Trump's remarks, asserting that Greenland is not for sale. The country's leader, Mette Frederiksen, called the move unacceptable and said it underlines Trump's interest in the island.
Jeg har for ganske kort tid siden afsluttet et møde med repræsentanter for senatet i USA sammen med vores gode kollega Vivian Motzfeldt fra naalakkersuisut og sagt meget klart, at det her er uacceptabelt, og det er noget, vi kommer til at give videre meget direkte til vores kolleger i USA, som jo med egentlig ret let kunne afvise, at det her ikke er rigtigt, hvis det er sådan, det forholder sig. Men jeg bliver også nødt til at sige, at det her understreger jo alvoren. Jeg har sagt fra starten af det her forløb, at jeg tror, at præsident Trump han mener det alvorligt, når han siger, at han ønsker, at USA skal overtage Grønland. Og det, I bringer frem i dag, synes jeg understreger den alvor.
Mark Stroh, who heads the US mission in Denmark in an interim capacity, pending the appointment of a permanent ambassador, was summoned for clarification on the allegations.
The German government has approved a bill proposing a new law aimed at promoting voluntary military recruitment. It said the aim is to increase the personnel strength of the Bundeswehr in response to new threats. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said he wants to increase the number of temporary and professional soldiers to at least 260,000 by 2035 and to 460,000 including reservists.
Die Bundeswehr muss aufwachsen, die internationale Sicherheitslage, vor allem das aggressive Auftreten Russlands, erfordert dies. Wir brauchen nicht nur eine gut ausgerüstete Truppe, da sind wir in vollem Lauf. Dafür sorgen wir seit 2,5 Jahren und hören nicht auf. Wir brauchen aber eben auch eine personell stark aufgestellte Bundeswehr. Erst dann ist Abschreckung als Ganzes auch wirklich glaubhaft gegenüber Russland.
From 2026, all young men and women will receive a questionnaire on willingness to perform military service. Answering it will be mandatory for men and voluntary for women. The German government stressed that enlistment would initially be voluntary. However, the bill would also allow the Bundestag to reintroduce compulsory military service with a simple amendment if not enough recruits enlist voluntarily.
The symbolism could hardly be more powerful. The leaders of France, Germany and Poland visited Moldova on the country's National Day on Wednesday. The message from them to Moldova's pro-European president is a simple one. We're here to support Moldova's accession to the EU. It is 1 month before parliamentary elections in Moldova, and the threat of Russian interference is real.
La propagande du Kremlin nous explique que les Européens souhaitent prolonger la guerre et que l'Union européenne opprime les peuples. Ce sont des mensonges. Contrairement à la Russie, l'Union européenne ne menace personne et elle respecte la souveraineté de chacun. C'est une union où chacun décide de rentrer librement, souverainement et où la souveraineté de tous est respectée.
Moldova's president, Maia Sandu, has repeatedly warned of an impending Russian hybrid operation involving vote buying, cyber attacks and disinformation in the run-up to the election campaign. Located between Romania and Ukraine, Moldova is directly affected by the geopolitical turmoil caused by Moscow's war of aggression against Kyiv. Chisinau is therefore seeking closer ties with the EU.
The three leaders of European Union spoke with one voice here in Chisinau. They recalled the Moldova independence from Soviet Union 34 years ago, and also they pledged to help Moldova to join European Union. The plan is to join in 2030, but it depends who will win in this parliamentary election on 28 September. If Russian forces will win, so Moldova will stay in a grey zone in the sphere of influence of Russia. From Chisinau, Vitalie Cojocari, Euronews Romania.
Caused flooding and landslides in parts of Southeast Asia on Wednesday, resulting in at least 8 deaths. Flooding occurred in several central and northern regions of Vietnam, killing 7 people and injuring at least 34. And in Thailand, several people were injured from flash flooding and landslides in the north of the country. One person died from a landslide in the northern city of Chiang Mai. The rain is an aftermath of tropical storm Kajiki, which made landfall in Vietnam on Monday. The storm then weakened to a tropical depression on Tuesday when it moved over Laos. Scientists have warned that warmed seas as a result of climate change would cause cyclones in the region to form closer to land, become faster, and last longer.
India is bracing for a sharp blow to its overseas trade as steep U.S. tariffs take effect on a range of Indian products. U.S. President Donald Trump had initially announced a 25% tariff on Indian goods, but imposed an additional 25% earlier this month due to India's purchases of Russian oil, bringing the combined tariffs to 50%. Officials have warned the new duties could make shipments to the U.S. commercially unviable, triggering job losses and slower economic growth. Labor-intensive sectors such as textiles, gems and jewelry, leather goods, food and automobiles will likely be the most impacted. The government has begun working on reforms to boost local consumption and insulate the economy. The Trade Ministry is also weighing steps to expand exports to other regions, particularly Latin America, Africa and Southeast Asia. Trade negotiations underway with the European Union could gain renewed urgency as India works to reduce its dependence on the U.S. market.